Welcome to the WDW Reflections Podcast. Here, we'd love to talk about the Walt Disney World Resort, the way we remember it, how it's changed, and why we still enjoy visiting the most magical place on Earth. So come with us on a podcast journey as we reflect on the WDW Reflections Podcast. Hey, y'all. Welcome to the WDW Reflections Podcast, your unofficial guide through Disney World and all things Disney, memories, and their connections to the parks we know and love today. I am Dewey. I'm one of the hosts of the show, and I'm coming to you from my house in Delaware. But so it's August now, guys, and it's like in the 60s. Like, what is happening? Last week it was 90 something, and it's in the 60s here, and I am not happy. Where is August? Anyway, we can talk about that later. Anyway, sorry, small rant. I'm not a fan of the cold weather, and I'm wearing the sweatshirts when it's 60. Anyway, Delaware, boo. This is the WDW Reflections Podcast. This is episode number 47. We thank y'all for being here with us. Before we get into this week's main topic, we'd like to invite y'all to connect with us through the show's social media accounts and have the opportunity to become involved as a contributor to future shows. We can be found on Facebook, Instagram, and on YouTube at WDW Reflections Podcast, and on Twitter at WDW Reflections. Are we calling it X now? They changed the name to X.
Oh, yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. Twitter, X, I don't even know what I'm supposed to refer to it anymore.
They changed. I saw that.
Yeah.
I was like, what's that?
I don't know.
And I just didn't have time to worry
Yeah,
about
I don't remember downloading that app.
No, Elon Musk is like, it would be great if we just changed the name of Twitter to a letter. Okay, but he's a billionaire. He's smarter than me, I guess. Anyway, over at Twitter or X or whatever we're supposed to call it, at WDW Reflections. And don't forget, for all things WDW Reflections Podcast, head on over to our website at wdwreflectionspodcast.com. All right. With all of that stuff out of the way, fellas, let's get started with the show. With me today are my podcast travel buddies, Ron and Tony. My buddy Ron coming to us from Cleveland, Tennessee. How you doing, Ron?
I'm doing well where it's still 90.
Oh, wow.
You lucky dog. You probably don't feel lucky, though, do you?
No, I have a pool in my backyard. I'm all good.
Oh, then you're all ready for 90 degrees. All right. Yeah, you're smart.
No, it's all good. I'm looking forward to today. It's going to be fun.
Good to see you again, Ron. It hasn't been, it's only been a couple of weeks or maybe less than 2 weeks since the last time. Yeah, it's the last time we got together, it'd been a month or so, but hadn't been so long since the last time. So that's good. We need to do this more often. And coming to us from the Big Apple, my good buddy, Tony G. What's up, Tony?
Hi, everybody. Just happy to be here as usual. And my regular message here is to go to our YouTube page. I've been adding a bunch of junk there, as well as to our Instagram pages.
It's not junk. It is really creative. You guys need to go check it out. It's good stuff.
I'm
quality
glad you'll
programming.
Well, you get to see some clips you get to see the entire show for one thing nowadays, as well as some clips from the show, as well as clips from the parks. We've gone to the parks over the past several months, and we're sharing a bunch of things from there.
This week, it's another big week for us on the show. We've been doing the show for almost 2 years now. In fact, our 2-year anniversary is just a couple of weeks away, later in August. So kind of a big month for us, I guess you could say. But today's show is actually going to be a first for us. And considering that the three of us are just giant Disney World, you could call us nerds, you could call us geeks, you could call us fanatics. That's what I prefer, is Disney World fanatic. But, I'll answer to whatever. But considering the three of us are such giant Disney World fanatics, this is a really big deal for us. Today, we get to share with you our first ever interview with a former Walt Disney World Imagineer. We had the honor of spending a couple hours chatting with former Walt Disney World Imagineer John Mayberry, and he was gracious enough to tell us some stories about his time with the company and share with us some of his experiences working on some of our EPCOT favorites, such as Impressions to France, The Living Seas, and even the beloved Horizons. So let's welcome to the show former Walt Disney World Imagineer, John Mayberry. John, super excited to have you here today. Welcome to the WDW Reflections podcast.
Pleased to be here.
Really exciting. So let's just start off with tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do. Let us know what you do now, and then we'll peel back the layers and we'll get into some of your origin story.
Well, I still work in the industry. Trying to retire, but still working on theme park. Let's see. I started off. My original interest in audio was introduction was strange. I was in England and I was in King's Cross in the train station there, and they only had like £5 on me, something like that. Not very much money. And I realized I was stuck there for 14 hours. I was like, well, what am I going to do on £5 in 14 hours? Like, pretty much nothing. So what I did is I went into the bookstore and I got the thickest book I could get for the least amount of money. And it happened to be called the Hi-Fi Yearbook. And at the time, and I had very little interest in audio at that time, mind you. And I started reading all the specifications and all the pictures and I realized this is an incredibly varied industry. And, you'd see things like something that was relatively inexpensive having these great specifications. And then you'd see these things that cost a fortune and they'd have terrible specifications. And I go, what is going on here? So that is what actually got me hooked into audio. So wow. I figured I was going to be a physicist, and I thought, nah, that's kind of boring. And, you can go a whole lifetime in physics and not do anything. But then I really got into audio, and I started working at Absolute Audio down in Santa Ana, which sold high-end equipment. And it became a passion for me, to be honest. I went to engineering school. Didn't learn a thing about audio in engineering school, just the basics of how you get to there. But I think Penn State has a program now, but they don't really teach it in the United States. But it was just, it's a fascinating industry. It's one of your five senses, and it's not like electricity or power distribution where it's multiple frequencies. And then I got into video and so forth. But yeah, I've had a nice career.
So you're, if you were to give yourself a title, what would you call what you do?
Oh, I don't know. I should have registered for the draft. I guess audio, acoustics, video. I do a lot of, my real goal is just to get things done and have people enjoy them. I figured at one time I did the calculation. And I figured about 7 or 8 million people see something I've done every day.
Wow.
Said, that ain't bad. That ain't bad. They don't know who was behind it. Obviously, you don't get credit for it because you're in engineering. But still, whether it was an Apple computer store or Microsoft computer store or those annoying commercials during the movies or whatever, I had something to do with it. And you know what? I've had a lot of fun.
So, sound engineer, sound design, that's kind of what you do. What exactly does that mean?
I don't have. Okay. The way I'll tell you how the Disney process worked at the time.
Okay. That'll be great.
There was an audio video production department that made the soundtracks. And they would create what was called a track list. And they would say, in this area, I want to have this loud a speaker system. It would cover this area. In this area, I would like to have this, and this is the source and all that. And we would take that information and we would convert that into an actual design. And first, invariably, you get involved in the acoustics of it, which sounds really boring, but it's not. And I'll give you an example. I'm going to go off on a tangent here. There was this guy named Exitensio. Do you know who he?
Oh, absolutely.
And we became friends. He was older than I was. He was probably 60 and I was in my 20s. But I started giving acoustics lectures. And he actually came to one. He goes, "You mean you could take something I've done that's really noisy and nobody understood and you can make it so it's intelligible?" I said, "Yeah, given the right exercise." He goes, "I did this one thing years ago." And what was that? He goes, "Well, it's this talking skull at the beginning of the Pirates ride." I don't know if you've ever been on Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yes, sir.
He wrote the music for that and the soundtrack.
Right.
Mhm.
I said, "Well, okay, what's the problem?" He goes, "You can't understand a word the skull's saying." I said, and it really was a safety spiel. It was like, keep your arms and legs in the boat so you don't get killed and that sort of thing. And he showed him how you deal with the reverberation and noise control and so forth. So they actually did it. And he goes, "That's unbelievable. You can understand what he's saying now." So that was kind of what my thrill, and it's admittedly, it's not as professional thrill, but
well, what kind
fun.
of preparation would you do for something like that? Did you stand in the ride physically and say to yourself, okay, this is what they're going to be listening to, this is where the sound's coming from, or was it all on paper based on the scientific?
Well, it's
aspect
not.
of it?
It's not horribly scientific, is the secret. But you look at it on paper and go, okay, what can you do? A lot of times there's limitations on physical attributes and so forth. But you try to get the noise down, you try to get the reverberation down, you try to improve the directivity of the speakers and so forth, and you can calculate whether it's going to be intelligible or not. Believe it or not, they have these things called textbooks, and they're pretty good. But I can't tell you all the secrets because it's so easy.
Yeah.
You take my job.
Well, when you retire, maybe you can share those secrets with us.
Hey,
I don't want to take your job.
Anyway, it's a lot of it. 60% of what you do, and because I would design large layouts, ground speakers everywhere, and so forth, it's really just getting a yellow highlighting pen and make sure it A matches B. The wire list matches the speaker list, matches the thing you're going to purchase, matches. It's like, okay, it'll work. It's fun, but there's some tedium in it.
So Ron, you said you had a question?
Yeah, I'm curious because unlike any place, when I'm in Disney, the sound when they're doing the parades around the park is so crisp and clear. And the outside there is no different than the outside at my house, but they really do a great job. And I'm assuming you're part of that.
Let me give you a hint. Okay. First rule. Acoustics Outdoors is always actually pretty good because you have no reverberation outdoors other than the slap off the buildings. It's inside the buildings where it becomes difficult. And like some scenes, if you're trying to approximate an outdoor area, for instance, you put a lot of fiberglass acoustical absorption in there and you put as much as you can, and it sounds like you're in the outdoors. But outdoors is actually a lot easier than indoors.
So let's go back. You told us that how you got interested in audio was buying that book when you were stranded in England for a few hours.
Which actually sounds like a wonderful, that's destiny almost calling you right there. It's saying here.
Well, what? It went down. It just got out of control for a while, but you know what? It's okay.
Yeah.
So you went to school for
engineering and electrical engineering, but pretty much the stuff that I really wanted to learn was self-taught.
Oh, okay. Awesome.
And nothing against the engineering schools because I went to a place called Harvey Mudd. Oh, by the way, Harvey Mudd has a theme song. Do you know what the tune that it's based on?
I don't.
Well, it's HARVEYMUDD, Harvey Mudd. Forever we will hold our slide rules high. I don't remember the rest of the song, but yeah, that's who knew, right?
So they actually do sing the Harvey Mudd theme song to the Mickey Mouse March.
Yes, they do. The other part that was, my dad was in advertising, and in Orange County, California. And you know what they give guys in newspapers? Back then, they don't do it anymore because newspapers aren't very important. Free tickets.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we went to Disneyland an awful lot.
Wow.
My brother got held up by Walt Disney, and I didn't, but he did. And you know what? Yeah, we pretty much went there at least 2 times a month.
Wow.
So,
you know, that's what we always talk about here on the show, about the difference between in Walt Disney World, it's more of a destination place. But I know when I was in California, I was struck by the fact that a lot of people there were locals who go there at 8 o'clock at night. They say, "Oh, let's go to Disneyland."
You know, I've been in Walt Disney World a number of times, and I was shocked at how many people would drive from Ohio.
Oh, yeah.
It's only a 22-hour drive from Dayton, you know. 22 hours.
Ron's actually from Ohio, John.
We didn't bother to go to sleep. We just went straight to the rides. Like, how can you do that? But that's a pretty common thing to hear from the guests down there.
John, I just drove from Delaware to Disney about 2 weeks ago, so it's frequent for us.
Well. Oh, God bless you. I don't think I would.
All right, so let's go back. So now you're out of school, and out of school, where was your? Where were you working?
I was loafing at my parents' house during the summer, and they said, "You got to get a job." I said, "Really?" So I did. And it was actually responding to that ad I was showing you earlier, and.
Would you mind showing that to us again?
No. It was in the Los Angeles Times.
So the LA Times had an advertisement. And for those of you that are listening to the show, I'll describe it to you. We're going to have this up on our YouTube channel as well. But so John has in a frame the actual newspaper ad that he answered in, I guess probably would have been the late 70s, John?
It was a very early 80s, actually.
Okay. And it says, got a big picture of Mickey Mouse, says, "Mickey wants you."
Yeah, and then on the right-hand side, it says, we want electrical engineers, electronic design engineers, dimensional engineers, mechanical engineers. You know what? I figured I can do some of that stuff. So anyway, they gave me a job, and I thought I was supposed to be a junior-level technician. So I could do that. You know, I fixed amplifiers and so forth at the old stereo store that I worked at. Said, "Oh no, you're going to design." See, it was the French Republic, United Kingdom, and Japan pavilions. Oh, that's interesting. I've never designed anything before. Well, you know, not like that. They said, "How would you go about it?" And I said, "Well, this is how I would." And he goes, "Well, that's exactly how you're supposed to do it. So get to work." So it was interesting. I think I'll tell you about the France Pavilion, because that was my first. It was the first EPCOT Center pavilion to open, not to the public, but just, you know, Disney was at the time was always scrambling for money. And you got to have something to show, right? You know, if you want an investor, you got to do the dog and pony. So it became the France Pavilion because we got that up and working before anything else. And it was 5 screens. Have you ever seen it?
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
All right. I did the audio system for that.
Oh, wonderful.
Anyway, and Rick Harper he made the movie, and I guess it's at a Guinness Book of World Records thing recently. It's like the most or the longest duration film ever shown. But anyway, There's something on there. But anyway, set it up and got it working. I didn't realize what a mistake that was. Because once you get something working, everybody shows up. And what does that mean? That means you're
more stuff.
You're stuck in that building. Make sure it's working, you know. And it was at the time everything was going to computers, but people didn't know that, so they thought it was all, you know. I had something to do with the operating of the show. I didn't. It just ran automatically, you know. they said, well, this sounds really good. And they had people fly in from all over the world just to see that show. So I ended up like working 126 hours, I think was a week. I said, I can't do this anymore.
Oh, man.
I remember one time I was sitting in the back of the pavilion at 3 a.m. and my girlfriend had dumped me because I'd been gone from home for so long. I wasn't making much money. I think my dog recognized me anymore. I was sitting on one of those canals. At the time, it didn't connect anything. It was just like a cul-de-sac canal there. And I was sitting there. It's 3 a.m. I said, God, I can't take this anymore. This is just this is a lot of work for not much of anything else. I said, give me a sign. And all of a sudden, a little security light popped up, one of those kind of orange sodium lamps in the back. And all of a sudden, thousands of little frogs started jumping up and down. I mean, I had contact lenses at the time, and I couldn't see very well. I said, what is that? I mean, it's just like a haze. You couldn't see through it. It was like fog, maybe. And finally, my eyes focused, and I said, oh, my God, they're frogs. French Pavilion, frogs. There's a sign. Okay, I will stick with this job and just finish it, and so forth. So anyway, I designed the Mexico Pavilion. That was the Exitentia did that one. That was interesting. I'll tell you about that in a little bit. But
that one's that's one of our favorite ones to go to.
Well, originally it was going to be much larger. And there's 2 stories to that. One is that Dick Nunes, who was the president of Walt Disney World at the time, said in the Orlando Sentinel that it was going to be an opening day attraction. Well, it was never intended to be an opening day attraction. And 2 weeks before the thing was done, nothing was ready. So, I felt pretty good because when nothing's there, no conduit, no nothing, it's like, and they're not going to try to get that open. Well, anyway, I got this call. It was 3 a.m. They said, John, come down. And it was a friend of mine, Les Scalota. And I said, what is it, Les? Why 3 a.m? He said, well, we're going to get this pavilion to work. I said, are you serious? Yeah, are you serious?
And this is anyway, 2 weeks before the park opens?
And I go, what would it take to do this? I said, I don't know. 150 electricians working around the clock for 24 hours. And then he had, and there's only one way to describe it, and I apologize to your readers in advance. He had this big shit-eating grin on his face. And it was a classic one. He goes, well, John, I have some good news for you. There's 150 electricians sitting outside ready for you. Oh, no. It's like, oh, no. So anyway.
Here they are. Just tell us what you need.
Well, the Mexico Pavilion was kind of interesting because, first of all, originally it was a much larger ride. And it was a circular ride. And they just chopped off the center section of it and just threw it in the trash.
Wow.
And I remember X said, what, John? 2,000 years of Mexican history has vanished before our eyes. There was 2 things I remember specifically about it. There was this one scene where it had a little character, and it was sort of like, anyway, it was a childlike wooden character, and all it did was go la 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 la. Okay, well, the contractors in the building weren't too fond of that speaker. So the first day it's disconnected. Do you know what's wrong with it? Yeah, I have a pretty good idea what's wrong with it. So we hooked it back up. The next day, somebody had taken a screwdriver and smashed it to the speaker cone.
Oh my gosh!
But yeah, I think we got to wait till opening day to get this one working. It was a strange, because everybody was getting triple time to work on that thing. There was a lot of slacking going on, shall we say. Anyway, there's a thing in there called, I don't know if it's still there, but they call the Tunnel of Time. And it's when the boat ride first starts off, and you're supposed to go back into history. And I think it's got an Aztec guy up in the front, and he tells you the story about how you're traveling back in time. And it had this horrendous rattling noise. And you being in charge of acoustics, Sean, that's your problem, right? Says, okay, I'll go see what it is. And I got on the radio. And I said, I think I found the problem. I said, what? And I said, well, maybe you ought to put a boat down there. And why a boat? Because I dropped down one Budweiser can. And then I dropped down another one, and then another one. He said, yeah, there's 800 or 900 Budweiser cans up here. I think that's your rattling problem. I'm not sure, but it could be. You can always tell a project that people are getting overtime because there's always scribbling on the drywall. They're figuring out how much their paycheck's going to be. There used to be a cantina. It's probably still there out in front of the Mexico Pavillion.
Mm-hmm.
And there's audio actually on top of the canteen. So I was up there early in the morning once, and I saw that there were 3 guys sleeping down there. Now, mind you, at the time, because audio is everywhere, you have security passes to go everywhere. You have the radio, and I wasn't the smallest guy. I will admit that. And I said, these guys they're getting paid to sleep. So I walked on top of them. So when I woke them up, I said, oh, I didn't know you were there. What are you guys doing? They started grumbling, and I said, let me get on the radio and talk to the head of security. Let's see what you're supposed to be doing. No. An interesting project.
All right, so that's the World Showcase. So you worked on France first, and then Mexico and England. England doesn't have an attraction, so is that just like some of the music that's just around?
Let's see. It was supposed to have an attraction. It didn't get it. I think they were talking about a Mary Poppins thing at one time in time. They never did it.
Mm-hmm.
Japan was supposed to have it was a show called Meet the World. And they actually have a large building out in the back of Japan to accommodate that, but they never put anything in it. So that became a mill work. And then they were going to make a volcano, Mount Fuji in the back of that thing.
Wow.
And a toboggan ride around it. But Fujifilm was going to be the sponsor of that, and Kodak didn't like that. So then they talked about putting the Matterhorn on the Germany attraction and so forth. They never actually built it. I think that would have been a nice little coaster.
Absolutely. That sounds like that would have been great.
But after that, then that was phase 1 of EPCOT Center. And frankly, they let a lot of people go after that. But I guess I was cheap enough to stay. So I got assigned the Horizons attraction, and I got assigned the Living Seas attraction. And then I said, that's enough for me. And I went to go work for NBC, and that was back when they had stereo audio and Miami Vice. You're not old enough to remember that. But then they called me back and said, you oversee the Disney MGM studio tour. You can be in charge of the electronics for that. And you can do Wonders of Life as well. And I was telling you yesterday about Wonders of Life. And at one time, that was a spectacular show. Now, that's not what they built, but I was telling you about, have you ever been to the Cranium Command Theater? Mm-hmm. I don't know if that exists anymore, but at one time, that was supposed to be like the Spaceship Enterprise. Barry Braverman designed this intricate design, and he had, there was the eyes, the ears, and they all had a separate guy controlling them. And it was just, you could have seen Captain Kirk in that thing. And they were all interacting. It was a great show. And then the budget cuts happened, and, Commander Scott went away, and then Uhura went away.
Aww.
And then it ended up being one guy. It's like, what? It's like, this show's lame.
So that's really interesting that it was supposed to be like the Starship Enterprise, a bridge, basically, that was supposed to be, inside the human head.
And Barry Braverman, wonderful design. I wish I had kept the document where he designed he had a picture of it, and it really was spectacular. But
so you guys were working under conditions where, as you were designing these things or preparing them, you had no idea if it was going to end up in the final version because it could just be cut like that.
Yeah, like I worked on Horizons for a long time, and that was called, I think it changed names about 3 times. It was Future Probe, and it was something else. So Century 3, and that was one of my favorites to work on. I really enjoyed Horizons, but
so Horizons is one of our favorites. So we'd love to hear some Horizon stories. Tell us what you did on that.
Well, I wrote on your little thing, one of the things that I did, Horizons was a very noisy ride. It had, I think it was 164 cars. They were suspended by a pipe, and they had 2 horse-and-a-half motors up above. And, 300 1-horsepower motors is kind of noisy.
Yeah.
So anyway, we said, you're not going to be able to pull this ride off unless you do some serious noise control in there. Because it had a couple of IMAX theaters. But what we did is we enclosed the drive system in a wooden enclosure, the whole route, and then came up with what's called UHMW. It's a kind of a plastic flap, and as the pipes went through, it kind of opened and it would reseal and so forth. It was very effective, and you could actually hear the show. Those motors got real noisy, especially when you went up the uphill grades, like in the IMAX theaters and so forth. So,
and the engineering that you did for that, was that part of the mechanics of it, or still sound related?
Well, that was sound and mechanics and architecture. That's kind of the thing. Dave Harbaugh was the mechanical engineer on that. He was an ex-Chrysler guy, and all the powerful motors from the 60s. He had some involvement in it. He was a real car nut. He was a great guy too. And then Steve Miles was the architect, and I was the acoustician, and I worked with a guy named Marshall Long as well. We said, and there was a year plus effort onto designing this thing. So we designed 3 maintenance stations within the tunnel, so you could work on the motors up above. And they had lights and operator control consoles and air conditioning and so forth. So it was really easy to work on the ride vehicle. So the uptime of Horizons, they have a term called THRC. I don't know if you know it, but it stands for theoretical hourly ride capacity. It was always one of the most popular rides because it always worked. And the reason
it's a shame it's not there anymore.
And well, GE only sponsored it for 10 years.
Yeah. But speaking of that kind of thing, wasn't there supposed to be some kind of observatory on Spaceship Earth before it turned backward, or there's things that were left undone all over EPCOT, obviously, to try to get it ready.
Spaceship Earth was a disaster.
Yeah, can you tell us about that?
Sure. Well, it's basically an oval ride, except it's tilted on its axis. So unless you get the loads balanced on the 2 sides, all the stress, the entire weight of the entire ride is on one connecting rod between 2 of the cars at the top. And the pieces of metal, they didn't have it right. There was a guy named Jack, I think O'Reilly, that finally figured it out. But you had to have motors on each side pushing the ride up, so it wouldn't snap those bars, the connecting bars. But there were some nasty pieces of metal that got smacked when we first did that. They weren't sure that they could actually get that thing to work. And then down at the bottom, there was an area where the cars were supposed to rotate and get back into the set position.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't. So for years, they had a guy sitting down there, an operations guy, whose sole job was to make sure the car rotated back in place. That was why Horizons got all the attention and the money it did, because Horizons was Spaceship Earth was such a mess mechanically. But one begat the other. It's like, no, you've got to do this. You don't have a choice, and so forth. So,
were any of these mechanics that worked out? When they do stage productions or whatever, or typically even Disney seems to do it in the videos we've seen, is that they have some kind of 3D model that they work from. So none of these mechanics were worked out in miniature or anything like that. They just had a Or were they?
I'll tell Horizons. You want that as a specific example? Okay. Did you ever hear about the Tahunga facility, WDI Tahunga? Suntalk Avenue up in San Fernando. It was a large warehouse space where they built a lot of the sets and so forth. But in the parking lot there, they actually built a miniature ride. And the ride had all the steepest curves and the highest rises and so forth. It wasn't the full ride, but it had all the difficult parts of the ride in that. So they actually put vehicles on there and they checked it to make sure it would work. But yes, they did. They did not do that on Spaceship Earth because they were rushed on the schedule. Yeah. But they did learn their lesson, and they did do that on Horizons. But in general, everything has a model. You know, they had very large models at WDI. They had one of the whole park in one of the rooms. You know, I don't even know how they got to some of those things. You'd have to crawl up on your hands and knees for a while. But yeah, it was. You know, modeling is a skill. It really is a skill. And, and I remember this guy named Trevor Bryant in the metal or the model shop. Absolutely fantastic guy. You know, just he was from New Jersey, so he even had a longer drive than the Delaware guys.
So some of the attractions you mentioned, some of the engineering that you did, like in Horizons. Were you also involved in, because I believe Horizons had in-car audio also?
Okay, there were 3 or 2 major audio. So I did all of the audio not in the car.
Okay, awesome. I was wondering about that distinction.
Okay, in the car, David Lansdowne did that, and it was based on the Sennheiser PAL systems, personal audio link system. And it was they used little infrared sensors, and they transferred the audio into those sensors on the track. It was really quite a nice system. Sennheiser still uses that in their translation systems. You know, especially in Europe, there's so many different languages spoken that they use a multi-channel way of transmitting via light. And David is a great guy, still around. He's even older than I am, but we're lifelong friends. So I admire the guy. He did a great job.
Yeah, may I ask, when you go, have you gone back to these parks as say an observer? Have you gone back to some of these things that you helped build and complained about them to yourself, saying, that should have been a little bit more like this, or second thought any of it?
I did go back in 2019. I had a limited amount of time, but I wanted to go see the France Pavilion, and we had actually ate dinner. My wife and I ate dinner at the Germany Pavilion before then, because I think they have the best food in the park. But I was just talking to my wife about some experiences I had, and this couple that was sitting, they have kind of communal tables there, and they started listening in, and I said, "Are you kidding me?" I said, "No. What's your favorite thing in the whole park?" I said, "It's the France audio system. And that's where we're going to go." Because at the time they were talking about tearing it out. I don't know if they ever did or not, but there's some things that, like Living Seas, I like the original design of that and the hydrolators and all that. Now it's some Finding Nemo thing. I don't even want to see it. No, I do have that feeling. There's other things that were good. You know, every project has a zeitgeist. You know, I was watching a thing on the movie Casablanca the other day. And amongst all its other things, Casablanca, the movie, came out right before the United States invaded North Africa. And one of the towns they invaded was Casablanca. So the movie came out exactly at the same time. And there is a lot of that. And, rides that are good, rides that are duds. You know, some are spectacularly bad. Some are spectacular good. There was, I'll give you an example of the bad one. Was it called Superstar Limo? Did you hear about that at California?
Oh, yeah.
Never been on it, but I know about it.
I don't even know if it exists longer.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't exist anymore.
But what it was you were supposed to be paparazzi. and you were supposed to go around the track and take pictures of various things while you were going around. Well, it opened up the same week that Princess Diana got killed by paparazzi being chasing her.
Wow.
So the only stars they could get were to go that would allow their images to be put on there were ones that had a Disney television show at the time. It's like, yeah, but you're not that big a star, you know. I wanted a big star to take a picture of me. But I mean, it happens, you know, and you could never have foreseen that.
Right.
That ride was considered a complete dud because of that. It was through no fault of the show designers. It just, you know, people didn't like paparazzi because they liked their Princess Diana, right?
So you mentioned the Living Seas. What did you do on the Living Seas ride?
I designed the audio system and the acoustic system. If you must know, it was a budget ride. After the second phase of Epcot, Disney was not doing well financially. So things that could have been great were made good, and things that were made good were made average. But Living Seas was I don't want to say it was a budget thing, but it wasn't like Land or Energy or Wonders of Life or Horizons. It was, you know, what can you get away with? And then things got really bad for a while. The studio tour, I don't know if you've ever been there, but everything on that. It was only supposed to be a half-day theme park because, again, they figured out these guys that were driving down from Ohio had 2.5 days. All right, then they had to drive back. So, and then about a week before opening, they said, no, it's going to be a full-day theme park. So, what? This is not. So, and there were various attractions in there. There was just anything and everything that could have gone wrong was enveloped in a show called Catastrophe Canyon. You remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Probably gone now. And now, from an audio standpoint, it was supposed to have speakers in the rock wall behind you, and and of course, the guy who made the rock wall concreted them in. Said, "Well, we can't jackhammer those out. So what are you going to do?" And you go, "Not much." You know, that thing. It had a lot of water in it, and the water would leak down into the electronic equipment room, or it was right below it. I was like, and then it was also one of those things. They said, "Well, how much do you think it will cost to do it?" I said, "I don't know, $1 million." So we got the $1 million estimate. And they said, "Well, can't you do something for $500,000?" I said, "Yeah." Then can't you do something for $250,000? Then can't you do something for $125,000? And then, you know, the first thought that went through your mind was, why bother with it? You know. But anyway, a week before opening, they said, this isn't very good. So they ended up putting $1 million back in the audio system at that point. But it was just a different time, you know. Disney had no money at the time, and they were trying to get it. You know, they were trying to make sure you didn't go to Universal at the time. I think that was what the thrust.
Mm-hmm.
But that didn't work out very well. But well, part of the problem was WDI, like the department I was in, was 220 people were in it. And then we got down to about 7. They were laying people off. Well, guess who was hiring them? You know, it was the Universal was hiring them at the time and saying, I don't think you should be laying these people off. At least not, you know, give them some money so they won't go and set up your competition and so forth. But that's what happened.
Did you ever get a chance to work for any other theme park other than Disney?
Yeah.
You did.
I've worked for a number of the theme parks. Universal's one. Right now I'm working on one for Mattel going in Arizona, believe it or not. That's supposed to open up next year. It's going to be hot, but it'll be air conditioned inside the little room, so that'll be fun. Can't kind of contractually tied it up.
Right.
Yeah.
No, that's right.
I'm sure you can look on the internet and see stuff about that.
What's that, Ron?
Did you ever work with any of the amusement parks in Ohio?
In Ohio.
Kings Island, Kings Dominion, or Cedar Point, or?
Did I? No. I actually, after studio tour, they had me go. It was a strange time, but they had Euro Disney land. It was Euro Disney at the time.
Yeah.
And they said, it all has to be European content. I said, well, that may be what your contractual guys say, but this is very specific what you need to have. And so I was sent over there for 3 years and to teach Englishmen how to design a Disney audio system. And I did the background music area public address system over there. And then I started working for AT&T, and I think it's a long story, but after Euro Disney, I got called back to Maryland Sound, which obviously is in Maryland, and they were a touring audio company, and they did baseball stadiums and stadia, and had big acts. They had like Whitney Houston and Michael Bolton and Frank Sinatra and so forth at the time. So I got to see that side of the industry for a while, and then I went to work for AT&T and designed transit systems. Actually, Camden Yards was the first building in the United States that had to be ADA compliant. And I met the guys that had just passed the legislation in Washington, and they came to Camden Yards. And I said, I'd be glad to, listen to see what you have to do. And it was a pretty reasonable, and I had a fun time with them actually. And but I learned what they were looking for, and I used that in the transit industry and designed those train systems for LA Metrolink and New York City Transit Authority and Chicago Transit Authority and Hong Kong Airport and stuff like that. So anyway.
You've worked with a lot of important people I've seen in your information here as well. Can you tell us a bit what it was like to help design the initial Apple stores?
Steve Jobs is an interesting character. First time I was going to meet him, we were working in the store in a warehouse on Bub Road in Cupertino. And I asked Simon Morrison, who was an Australian actually, how will I know when Steve's here? He goes, don't worry, you'll know. And then we were doing something. All of a sudden, this black Mercedes pulls in and parks in the handicap thing. He wasn't handicapped at all. The guy comes in, the door slams really hard. Wham! And he goes, what's going on? And Simon turned his head to me and goes, do you have any questions when he'll be here? Actually, Steve loved audio. And we got in some of the big rock rolling his fights over audio. And I'm not going to back down, Steve, because you're just wrong. But the first Apple store had a theater in it.
Yeah.
It was connected to the internet. You could do teleconferencing in there. Mm-hmm. From the podium in there, you could press buttons, and a place in Richardson, Texas had downloaded audio. Now it sounds like no problem because, we're doing this. But back then, that was the first place to do that.
That was in Palo Alto?
No. Well, the prototype was in Cupertino on Bub Road.
Okay.
But the first two stores were in Virginia. It was, what was the name? Tyson's Corner, Virginia, and Glendale Galleria in California. Okay. And they opened on the same day. Obviously, the Virginia store opened first. I actually was at both of the stores on the same day, on the first day. And
wow.
The lines for that store were unbelievable. They were 1,000 person deep at least. So, at the time, nobody knew if those stores were going to be
absolutely. I remember that.
And the night before Tyson's Corner opened, Steve Jobs recorded a video, and I think it's still on the internet. And then after that, there was one of the huge fights we got into. And he started yelling at me. And then he told me he was going to beat me up. I said, Steve, come on. One of us is 5'6", and one of us is not. You know, not to put too big a point onto it. One of us was a heavyweight wrestler, and one of us is not.
Was that the hardest CEO that you've had to work with? Have there been other hardheads like that you've kind of gone against?
He was quite memorable. Let's put it that way.
Absolutely.
But he was passionate.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got to give him that. And, you know, he paid his bills. And regardless of what else you want to say, the guy paid his bills. You know, and that doesn't always happen in this world. And, you know, you didn't have to fight him. He just paid it. Sony was that way, too. They paid their bills really on time. Just much appreciated. You know what I'm saying? And then I got called back to do 22 of the systems at Disney Seas. I don't know if you've ever been to that. It's over in Tokyo.
In Tokyo.
Have not yet. That is a definite bucket list for me.
Actually, I think that's supposed to be the nicest. It is. I think France is the prettiest of the parks. Certainly the castle in France is the most nicely landscaped. But I think Disney Seas is probably the most fun of all the parks now. I think, I don't know what's happened at Disney in the last few years, but they seem to have lost their mojo in a few ways. So hopefully they'll get it back. You know, you know, you don't see that sparkle in people's eyes anymore. And I would love to see that again, but you know, it's time for somebody else to do it. Right. I worked on I guess I can work on it. There's a Frozen Land going in Euro Disney, and I worked on that a couple of years ago. But
oh wow,
I don't know if they ever built it or not. It was right during COVID times. It was all hot and heavy, and I don't know if they're going to build it or not. You know, they've had some tough times recently. Their stock's about half of what it was last year. So
we're almost to the end of our time with you. Yesterday, when you and I just chatted real quick, you told me a story about when you were installing audio systems around the World Showcase Lagoon for the fireworks show. Would you like to share that story with our listeners?
I've told that story 100 times in my life. Okay, at the time they had 3 barges out in the center of the World Showcase Lagoon. And there were a bunch of fireworks on those things, and they were all synced together with SMPTE time code, right? Well, anyway, and at 3 a.m, because you know I was the youngest one of the lot, so I got to fix the parade route, which is just going through a bunch of different mud holes and figuring out the wiring. But I was in front of the Canada Pavilion with my brown EPCOT Center jacket on, and the boats would come out and they go, but one night, you know, you could hear very well because it was very still and very cold. I heard this 3 little splashes, and it was 3 guys jumping off the boats. And what happened is they had locked up the SMPTE time code, so the fireworks salvoed, and that means they all fired at the same time. The whole 20-minute show.
Oh.
And they unfortunately were aimed at the Canada Pavilion. So anyway, I caught on fire, and I ended up jumping into the lake. Got to get the fire out somehow, right? And then I remember I was staying at a golf resort at the time. And I said, I'm just going back here. I don't know what I'm doing here. Anyway. So anyway, I told my wife the story, and I just forgot about it. So years later, we was over working on Euro Disney, and there are 3 guys from Electrosonic there. They started telling this story, and it was from the opposite side. They were the guys on the barges, and they said we jumped in the water, and you know this poor dumb son of a bitch from the Canada Pavilion caught on fire, and he looked like a fool. And you know, and he finally jumped into the water. They didn't realize that I was the person. And my wife turned to me and she goes, I never believed you when you told me that story. now I do. Anyway, that's the story. It was an interesting night.
How was that water? Was it cold and gross, or?
Everything in Florida in November is cold.
Yeah.
The wind whips through any clothes.
Yeah.
You know, there's a reason that wool sweaters come from Scotland, right? And Willis Carrier did his finest work in Florida, right?
Very nice.
Probably the greatest American ever. The guy who Willis Carrier is the guy that invented air conditioning. And he's much appreciated throughout some of the United States this month.
Absolutely.
You know, not very often does anybody hear about Willis Carrier, but they should. He should be up there on Mount Rushmore as far as I'm concerned. All right. Well, I'm sure I bored you enough, but
I, for one, was not bored at all, John. This has been a pleasure for us. But being, I'll speak for myself. I know the other guys did too, but for me, being the giant EPCOT, you know, we'll just say nerd. I'm a huge fan.
I wouldn't have traded it for anything, but did it make any sense? No. But I will say that the values that EPCOT originally had were looking forward to the future, which is really what it was all about.
Absolutely.
We've lost that in the United States, and we really could get that back. You know, tomorrow will be a better day.
Couldn't have said it better. Couldn't have said it better. Absolutely.
That was a very special time, and I will always appreciate that. And the guys and the women that I worked with were just spectacular.
You being here is a really big deal for us. I cannot say thank you enough. You did not bore me in the least. I could probably sit here and listen to you talk for a week straight.
Well, you know, engineers can be thought of as boring. On occasion.
I was very you had me sucked in. I was, you know, with you the whole time. I really appreciate you spending your time with us today, and again, it means the world to us for our show and everything.
Well, you know what? I'm glad you're doing it, because you know what? We're all dying.
And that's what our show's about, is about telling our memories, but also bringing in people and so we can hear their memories. And, you know, you were one of the guys that brought this to us, and without people like you, we wouldn't have the memories that we like to share on our show. No. So,
it was a lot of fun. You want one more going away story?
Sure.
Oh, I will not say no to another story.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I know podcasts don't really have it decided. All right. So before they opened EPCOT Centers to the public, they had a special night there, and they had every major swing and big band act in the world. Harry James, Count Basie, and so forth. But the idea was that you were supposed to wear a tux, and you're supposed to bring your best girl, and you're supposed to go to the attractions. Okay, so I went to the French attraction to show my girl at the time, and we sat down, we had champagne and so forth, and they had these special entertainment. And in France, it was these weird guys with wool suits on, and they danced around on stilts. And they would go up, up, oh, up, up. And it was just, oh, please. Well, anyway, operations didn't really know how the system worked right then. And at the time it was on a film loop, and it was 20 minutes long. And they missed the film loop start. So it meant we had to listen to 20 more minutes these guys dance around on stilts. I was like, oh. And I may have had a little too much to drink that night. But then the cue came up again. I said, oh, hell no. I got out of the audience. I walked up to the front console, and for the operations people, engineering is not supposed to embarrass operations at all. And I hit the buttons in the right order. So the curtains open and the lights dim and the movie starts and everything. And I went back to my seat and I sat down. I said, that could have been a career-killing error.
Oh.
And I realized Ron Miller was sitting right behind me.
Boy.
Ron Miller at the time was, I don't know, a CEO, I think, of Disney. But he was a big guy. He had played for, I think, the Los Angeles Rams and the USC football team.
And his Disney son-in-law, for that matter.
Yeah, he married Diane Disney, but that's another story. But anyway, I go, oh, my career is just over. So,
but you couldn't take another round.
I couldn't take another round. I didn't realize. I didn't know he was there. I mean, I legit. So anyway, we watched the movie, and everybody enjoyed the movie, and so forth. The movie ends, and then we all get up and walk out. And the exiting doors open up, and I'm trying to sneak out. I feel this big paw on my shoulder, and it's Ron Miller. And he goes, "Son, you are my hero." I had to watch those guys on the stilts one more time. This was so bad. It was like, oh my goodness.
So your career was saved. So
anyway, about 2 weeks later, I'm back in Glendale, and I get this interoffice memo. Remember those things? The envelopes. He goes, "You have made a significant contribution to EPCOT Center," and it's signed Ron Miller.
Awesome. That's fantastic.
Are you kidding me?
That is great.
That's awesome.
Anyway, I thought my goose was cooked.
That's excellent. That was a great story to end on, John. Thank you so much.
All right. You take care, and it was a pleasure.
Thanks so much.
Same here.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care. Have a good day.
All right. Bye.
Okay. All right, fellas. So I don't know about y'all. You know what? I do know about y'all. I am quite sure that was probably one of the coolest things that you guys have been able to do. For me, it was. I've never had the opportunity to talk to a Walt Disney World Imagineer or a Walt Disney Imagineer before. Really big deal for me personally, but really cool for us here on the show. So
I'm very grateful for him to give so much of his time and chat and tell us things that we would never hear anywhere else.
Absolutely. You know, I mean, some of those stories, you know, we hear stuff about, you know, oh, when I worked on Horizons, blah, blah, blah. You know, I've heard other interviews with different Imagineers, but some of the stories he shared is, you know, really personal stuff that happened personally to him. And then, you know, the story about the fireworks deal at the end, that was hilarious. So that's stuff that you can't get anywhere else. Just, you know, each individual Imagineer, you know, sometimes maybe we forget that these are, you know, real people. And so it's really awesome to hear those stories. So cannot thank John Mayberry enough for spending that time with us. And, you know, it's an honor for us to have had him on the show. So, John, thank you. And fellas, I know that was really awesome. It was awesome for me. I know you guys had a great time too. Definitely. All right. So let's switch on over to the next segment of the show. What's happening around Walt Disney World? And this just came out yesterday, and I thought it's not a big deal, but it's a little exciting and sounds fun. So yesterday, Disney World or Walt Disney World or whatever, they submitted a request for construction plans to build the new Figment meet and greet area set, whatever you want to call it. And so for me, that's, you know, I've been a Figment fan since I was, you know, a kid. And I remember the first couple of times I went, the walk around character was Figment being held by Dreamfinder. And, you know, Figment was, you know, don't tell the kiddies, y'all, but Figment was a puppet.
Oh, no, was he?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I thought he was a figment of my imagination.
He wasn't really there.
Okay.
But Dreamfinder, the walk around character, was holding the Figment puppet. And that was, you know, that was in the 80s. And then just a few years ago, there was the Figment character you could go meet that the dude was like 7 foot tall. It was giant Figment. And, you know, again, super cool. You know, I liked being able to see Figment, and my kids were around then. So it was probably early 2000s when that was going on. But Figment hasn't been seen, you know, outside his appearances in the attraction. Figment hasn't been seen as a character that you can meet. So Disney just filed for the permits to build this. And so the same company, Bungalow Scenic Studios, that's who's going to, basically what they're going to be doing is going to be building the sets for wherever you're going to meet Figment. And they've done a few other things for Disney recently. They've done the Encanto camp experience in for Disney Cruise Line. And they've done a couple other things with Wreck-It Ralph and stuff. So they've done work for Disney before, but this permit just being filed for yesterday, August 3rd, is new stuff to us. So the thing I wanted to talk to you guys about was, number one, did you guys get to see Figment or meet Figment in any of his previous incarnations? You know, little Figment being carried by Dreamfinder in the 80s, or giant, scary, Godzilla-sized Figment in the early 2000s. You guys ever meet either of those Figments?
I didn't meet him, but I remember seeing the guy with Figment. It was during my first trip to Epcot in '91, and so I didn't even know what that was because I think I was on my way into the ride. So unfortunately, I had no connection to it. But I remember the guy with the top hat and the puppet.
Yeah, I don't know that I met him either. I know of Figment through the internet and the just studying and looking at Disney and from that perspective, but no, I never had the opportunity that I remember.
He's become a legendary superstar.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
the symbol of Epcot.
Absolutely.
So Ron, I know your first trip was in '76. No Epcot, obviously. And
right,
then,
but we did our first trip to Epcot was '83.
So in '83, you would have been 42 years old in '83, right? So
Nice.
No.
So, but no, you were still a kid. But maybe you don't recall seeing Figment, so
Right,
that's okay.
yeah. I do remember it, but I don't know that I don't have clear memories. So I don't know if it was memories from seeing it on the internet or seeing it in person.
That's me too. I'm not sure I saw Dreamfinder carrying Figment when I was a kid. In my head, I think I did, but I also think that I've seen it so many times on, like on the Disney Channel when I was a kid, and you see it all over the internet now. I'm like, are those implanted memories? Because I don't have any.
Say
Mandela
that characters were not readily available either trip.
That's true.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
And so it seems like I would have had a vivid memory, because I can remember today as an adult when I first saw Mickey and we were able to take a picture with him. And because we couldn't see characters back in the day, I mean, you saw them in the parade, but you couldn't interact with them like you can today. So
yeah, I remember as a kid, they would just pop up somewhere sometimes. Like you would just be walking, whatever, down Main Street or whatever, and they would just be at certain locations. There were no meet and greet spots. That wasn't a thing in the 80s. So I don't have any pictures or anything of me as a kid with Dreamfinder and Figment. So if I met them, there was no photograph taken of it. So I'm not 100% sure I saw it. To me, it was probably something I saw on the front of a map or something,
It was literally a figment of your imagination.
Yeah, I have no idea. And maybe I did, and I just don't have a picture of it. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I definitely saw giant Godzilla Figment, 7 foot tall Figment with my kids back in the early 2000s.
I think we have a photo of that. Can we share that photo? I think we have that.
I'll have to dig. I think I do.
I think we have it in the file.
Oh, okay, awesome. Well, if we do, pop it up right here. Okay. Sorry. I woke up silly this morning. So, okay, so my second part of the question is, so now that we know Figment's coming back, how do you want to see him? How do you want to, and is Figment a dude? I don't even know if we know. Figment, I don't know. We say he all the time. I don't know.
He's a dude.
Okay.
In my mind, he's a dude.
How do you want to see Figment? Do you want to see Figment? I know, like, you could go see a couple of years ago. I don't know if it's still there. It was before they opened Galaxy's Edge. You could go see BB-8.
Yeah, they still have that in Disneyland. Okay. I'm sure they have it in Disney World.
So BB-8 is just like on a pedestal.
Yeah.
And he would like move around,
Right.
Obviously it's a animatronic. So how do you want to see Figment? Do you want to see Dreamfinder holding Figment? Well, that'd be a great throwback, but Dreamfinder's not really in the attraction, so I find that hard to believe. I would love it, but I'm not buying that. Do you want to see giant 7-foot-tall Godzilla Figment? Or do you see maybe like a BB-8 kind of, actual size Figment to, what actual size Figment, like he's a real thing, but what we think Figment is based upon his size in the attraction, or something else? What do you guys think? Like, if I know you're chomping at the bit, you're ready to meet Figment now. How do you want to meet Figment? Do you one of those that I suggested to you, something we've seen before, or something else? What do you guys think? What do you think, Ron?
I know Jen's first comment about it was that she's like, which Figment is this? Is the one from the 80s or the one from now? She liked the old one, the way it used to be. So I know, well, if he does appear, whatever form, we'll be there to see him. But I was thinking this might be something more like Turtle Crush, like if that's the right.
Turtle Talk with Crush.
Turtle Talk with Turtle
okay.
Crush.
Turtle Crush. Turtle Crush.
Where you get to go into this room and Figment can pop in now holographically or something, and you can talk to him that way.
Interesting.
That's
so okay.
Because why would they build a whole thing for a meet and greet?
Turtle Talk with Figment? That sounds
Turtle
weird.
Talk with Figment. There you go.
All right. So Tony, you're thinking it might be some sort of interactive
an
thing,
experience,
like
because
that.
Especially since they're taking out a permit for this, they don't necessarily need to do that just to stick them in a room.
That might be true. Very interesting.
Wonder if it could be a ride then.
Yeah, they already had
one.
that. It's called Journey to Imagination.
Uh-huh.
I know it's not great, but it's there. So what do you think, Ron?
Yeah, I think Tony's onto something. But if you're asking what I'd like, I think the actual size where he's like an animatronic that you can interact with, maybe similar to Turtle Talk with Crush, but more hands 3D than just a screen.
Like BB-8 or
or
one of those.
So you want a hybrid.
Yeah.
You want Tony's idea. You want Figment to talk to you like they do on Turtle Talk with Crush. So a cast member behind, like the Great and Powerful Oz behind the screen,
behind the curtain,
right? Yeah. So a cast member interacting with you in the voice of Figment with the animatronic Figment character there, right? Like physical character there in front of you.
Correct.
Interesting. I like both of those ideas. I don't know how they're, and I have no idea.
Disney used to have a progression of their technology. It used to be they try one thing and then it goes on to the next thing and it goes on. So that's what I'm hoping that they incorporate into this.
Well, I know that right after the quarantine and pandemic and all that, they had the Mickey Mouse and the Minnie Mouse with the blanket eyes and the would talk and stuff. Apparently they're not around right now. They're like on vacation or something. So I know that there has been evolution in character meet and greets. So I don't know what they're going to do with Figment. And this is just a permit to build a set. So who knows? I know a couple. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, I know a few weeks ago we talked about that the meet and greet for Figment was coming, but it may or may not be ready for the beginning of the 100 years anniversary celebration. And this doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be ready. This is just, and it also, the permit doesn't say where it's going to be built. So it's really doesn't tell us any of that stuff. It's just that Figment we knew Figment was coming for a meet and greet. We just don't know what version of Figment we're going to get. So I think it's great that Figment's coming. He's, even back in the 80s, he was sort of the unofficial mascot, I guess you could say, of EPCOT. And so it's really cool. He's grown in popularity and he's on all kinds of stuff nowadays. So I think that's great.
I wish they'd bring back
Studer Computer.
Who?
Orange Bird.
Oh yeah, so Jen, she loves Orange Bird.
So now they haven't brought back a walk around character, but Orange Bird is on all kinds of merchandise.
Really?
Oh
yeah.
He's all over the place.
We have some of it.
He was the mascot of I don't remember which one it was, if it was Food and Wine or if it was
it was one of those spring festivals a couple of years ago.
Yeah, it wasn't the Festival of the Arts.
The flowers, the flower
garden, maybe. Yeah, maybe it was. But when we were there in April, in the new character shop over there in EPCOT, the new part that they've opened, they had a whole section of the store that was all Orange Bird stuff, and they had shirts and hats and those Loungefly backpacks, and I mean everything, a ton of Orange Bird stuff.
That's cool.
So Ron, I don't know if you're ever going to be able to take your picture with the Orange Bird like you could in the 70s, but you can get Orange Bird merchandise for sure. So he's kind of back.
And guys, I know that we're in a bit of a crush for time, no pun intended, but I just wanted to share a quick reflection that this reminded me of. Back in 2002, when I made a trip to visit my nephew in California, we went to Disneyland, and we walked into one of those rooms, and they moved us over to one of the secret chambers. They said, "Hey, do you guys want to speak to Stitch?" We were like, "What? What are you talking about?" He says, "Come here, hold on a second." There's the fire engine as usual.
No. Welcome to New York.
Welcome in. It doesn't matter what day. Anyway, they asked us to go speak to Stitch, and what it was a little screen in a quiet, secluded room where we would talk to Stitch, and we told him, "Hey, this is my nephew," and he was talking back to us and saying funny things. And like a year or two later, that developed into Turtle Talk with Crush. So that's why I mean about this progression.
Okay.
I remember that as we were talking, I'm like, "Oh yeah, we had that experience with Stitch."
Wow.
So that's cool. I'm happy for any time they bring back something of old EPCOT Center and everything. So this is good news for me.
Yes.
I'm happy about it. I can't wait to see what becomes of it. But when this popped up in my, Disney World news feed or whatever yesterday, I wanted to talk about it because that's good stuff. So we'll see. It's supposedly only going to be a couple months until this thing's up and running because it's supposed to be part of this 100 years anniversary of the Disney Company celebration. So,
and it's going to be incredibly popular because if Oswald has as much popularity as he does, and no one even knows what that is, just imagine Figment.
Yeah, looking forward to that. So, I'm sure we'll be talking about that some more in a couple of months when it's revealed what all this is. All right, guys, great discussion. So let's go ahead and move on over to the last segment of the show. That's something that we like to call What's Your Favorite? Each episode, one of our hosts brings with him a question to ask the other two guys. Those two hosts don't know the question ahead of recording and must answer the question on the spot. So this week, Ron is taking control of the What's Your Favorite segment, and he's going to surprise and awe us with a fantastic question that we're going to have to think about. So, Ron, what you got this week, buddy?
Yeah, I think you guys are going to like this question. And you may have to, it may be difficult or it may not be difficult at all. So the question is this: knowing everything you know now, and we can do this by part, knowing everything you know now, what era would you go back and visit?
Wow.
Or how would you choose to have the parks be as they are today, or would you choose to change them to a specific era?
Wow.
So you're talking about like a Back to the Future deal. We have Doc Brown's DeLorean and we can visit any era, but if we we're not bringing something back. We're literally going to
switch the park
to 1987, and that's what the park is going to be, or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
So who's ready? And we'll go. We can do. Let's Magic Kingdom and Epcot. I don't know that Animal Kingdom. Well, I guess it's changed quite a bit, but so we can do that. Let's just do all three. So we'll just do them all together as one each of us.
So I will list what era or whatever I would go back to for each one. I'm only going to talk in length about one though. So Animal Kingdom, I actually think I would visit today's Animal Kingdom. I wouldn't go back. Animal Kingdom, I was there in May of '98, after it had just opened, literally just 2 weeks after it opened. And it was fun. It was cool. It was a new thing. But it's a much better, much more realized park now than it was then. So I'm digging at today's Animal Kingdom. I would not go. I mean, it was fun, but today's Animal Kingdom is better. MGM Studios, I would certainly go back to the MGM Studios of probably the early 90s. Not the year it opened, because Star Tours wasn't open yet, but maybe 90, 91, something like that, because I want to visit the Monster Sound Show and Superstar Television and the old backlot tour. So I would go back early 90s for that. Magic Kingdom, I would definitely go back to the 80s. I remember as a kid, being able to, walk up. Hey, what time is the 3 o'clock parade? It's at 3 o'clock. That's right. Thanks. You could walk up at, 2:59 and get a front row spot for the parade, in the 80s. I remember, and all the greats were there. Haunted Mansion was there. Pirates of the Caribbean was there. Space Mountain was there. Big Thunder Mountain Railroad was there. All the greats were there. So less crowds, more fun for the 80s, mid to late 80s at the Magic Kingdom. Definitely would do that. And then, I mean, it's a no-brainer. EPCOT Center of the 80s, 100% definitely would go back to that. Horizons, World of Motion, The Living Seas, just to be able to go there and stand in those buildings that were works of art of them, all on their own, and hear the music from those attractions and absorb that. But if I could do that today as an adult, I would die a happy man. Like I could just die right there in the queue for Horizons, and I could die a happy man. That's a no-brainer for me. Is EPCOT of, say, 1988, probably. That would be amazing. Easy for me. Animal Kingdom today, MGM Studios early 90s, and EPCOT Center and Magic Kingdom late 80s. Boom, I'm there. 100%. Good question, Ron.
Tony?
This is difficult, but I don't want to be boring and repeat a lot of what you said, Dewey, because a lot of what you said I totally agree with. I feel very similarly about all of those. I'll go backwards like you did. Animal Kingdom, I have not even been there in about 12 or 13 years, so I definitely would like to see what it's turned into, what it is now. Magic Kingdom, I would say, for me, my first trip, it was 91, and it was magical then. Somewhere between 91 and 97, before the Pink Castle, I would love to be back in there during that period and enjoy what it used to be. Like you said, it was emptier. I remember there was one day, I think it was 93 or sometime between 91 and 93. I went. I was free that day. I was visiting family. They didn't want to come to the park. I went on every single attraction all by myself that day. I mean, including the Skyway. I'll never forget that. I just said, I just want to take the day and just go on everything. And I just did, because you could. So I missed that. So I would go then. EPCOT, absolutely. The 80s sounds amazing based on everything that we've talked about here. I missed a lot of that because I didn't go till 91. Although I will say EPCOT 95 has a special place in my heart. It was right before technology caught up with what was going on there. And a lot of what we thought was going to be in the future actually is here. So I'd like to go back and see it again and see how close they got to that. And I think, is that all the parks? MGM Studios. I miss MGM Studios. That used to be my favorite park. Although I can't say that I would like it to change back, because now that it's got Galaxy's Edge there. So I'd say the 90s, if anything, if I have to go back on that one.
No, you don't have to go back.
You don't?
No.
You can choose and you can come back.
Oh, no. You have to, if you change it, it's changed for good.
Oh, no. Marty, It's created a paradox. I don't know.
But don't bump into yourself.
My former self, yeah.
Yeah, that'll create a time paradox. Don't do that.
What about you, Ron?
I was thinking this was going to be easy, but it's really not. I would love to go to Walt Disney World of 1976, but I don't want it to stay where you have to buy a ticket for every ride and have to between rides, and though it would be nice to have some of the freebies back that they did that were so cutting edge of the day. So I'm going to say take it back, but obviously there's pros and cons with that. And you thinking, so the mountains weren't there in 76, correct?
More than likely not. Certainly not Splash Mountain. Probably not Space Mountain.
If Splash wasn't there, the railroad definitely wasn't there.
Right, the railroad, and it's certainly not Space, probably.
No, Space Mountain was there.
Space Mountain opened in 75.
Yeah.
Big Thunder Mountain was open. Gosh, I don't remember when that opened, but I want to say it was in the 70s. I don't know if it was there when you were there in 76, but it was late 70s, early 80s. I'd have to look. But Splash Mountain definitely wasn't there. That opened in 88, I think.
Okay. Wow. So
yeah.
I guess I'm with you guys. I'd rather see it in the early you guys even are later than me, but I remember it with my kids, and I would probably take it back to 2003. Epcot, I'd take back to the 80s. I was fortunate to go in 83, but don't remember anything. We had went to the World's Fair, and I just was like, this is just a World's Fair. This is dumb. We need to go to the beach. And we didn't do Disney. So both of my first experiences that I wasn't thrilled in 76 with Walt Disney World, and I wasn't thrilled with Epcot in 83, but I've since become a huge fan. And then I'm with you guys. I would leave Animal Kingdom exactly where it is. I think they've done a really good job of developing that park. Anytime something's new, you kind of lose some of the marketing that they originally did that I thought was kind of creative and good, but they've done a good job of developing that park, and Dinosaur is on its way out. So that's always a good thing. And then I would take MGM Studios back to probably 2003 as well. So
that was a good question. That's hard. But man, wouldn't that be fun if we could have the 1988 Epcot and go visit Walt Disney World, but have today's Animal Kingdom with 88 Epcot and
right, or even bits and pieces. Like if I could go back and just enjoy the parade from 76. That's the main thing I remember from that trip is the parade, and it just was incredible. They've always done a good job with parades. So
absolutely, that'd be super cool, man. Holy smokes! Thank goodness for YouTube though, because you can go see most of that stuff.
Yeah, I was shocked at not videos, and there may be videos out there as well, but you can see a lot of I can't say the word, but a lot of the
memorabilia.
Thank you.
That's a hard word.
From 76.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff out there, which is, I mean, I don't know. Nowadays there's everything, but in the 70s, it was not like today. So
yeah,
there's a lot of stuff out there though. It's cool. I know I told you guys, I recently got I was there for the 15th anniversary, so I'm kind of partial to that merchandise. So I recently got a 15th anniversary button, so that I
that's very
see
cool.
It. There you go. So that's really cool stuff. So it's fun to find old stuff like that.
Yeah.
Good question for what's your favorite, Ron. That was awesome. All right, y'all. So that just about does it for this episode of the WDW Reflections podcast. Please find and follow us on all of our social media. We can be found on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at WDW Reflections Podcast, and on Twitter or X or whatever we're calling it now at WDW Reflections. This podcast can currently be found and played on many podcast platforms, and we'd love it if you'd give the show a follow wherever you listen. And if you love the show, please leave us some feedback on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify. Those positive feedbacks help the show reach a larger audience and helps us grow. And don't forget, you can catch all of our video podcasts and all those amazing shorts that Tony's been creating over at YouTube at WDW Reflections Podcast. And don't forget, we also have our website, wdwreflectionspodcast.com. And don't forget, you can message us on any of those social media accounts, or you can even email us at wdwreflectionspodcast.com. at gmail.com. We'd love to hear from y'all. And please keep coming back because we truly appreciate you. Thanks for reflecting on Walt Disney World memories with us on the WDW Reflections Podcast.
See you real soon.